I testify.
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 I testify by
20 years was a lifetime. 20 years took my childbearing years from me. 20 years took both my parents from me. 20 years was a lifetime.
My name is Latanya Reed. I have 3 children. I have Tiana, Larry, and LaRon. Tiana's 18, Larry's 14, and LaRon is 9.
So my name is Victoria Leanna Rocha, and I currently work at Fresno City College as a student peer mentor for the Rising Scholars Program, where we work with formerly incarcerated students who are trying to change their life through education. And I'm also a full-time student at Fresno State University to acquire my bachelor's degree in social work.
My name is Angela Bass. I'm currently working for a private family as in private duty nursing. Hopefully that'll transition into my own business at some point. That's where I'd like to go with that.
My name is Stephanie Jeffcoat, and I'm all of us are an organizer for a New Way of Life Reentry project. I have 4 children. My oldest name is Christophon, he's 16. My second child is Kamira, she's 11. My third is Damari, he's 8. And my youngest is Harmony, she's 4.
So my struggle with addiction really began when I was, I want to say 11, 12. You know, my parents were fighting their own battles, so I just really felt like that was what life was. That's all we seen, so that's all we knew. So my first time going to jail, I'll start there, was because of my drug use, was 3 days after I turned 18. I did a year flat is what they call it, which is a whole year in county jail. And I got out and I was on probation and I got pregnant with my oldest son. I was out for 6 months and I did a petty theft and they sentenced me to 2 years in prison, except this time I was pregnant with my oldest son. Well, I went into labor in the chow hall, and that's where you eat in the prison. And I didn't even know if it was labor or what, because it was my first child. And that was scary already. So February 11th, they drove me to Madera County Hospital. And I was in labor for a day and a half with my ankle cuffed to the bed. And wishing I didn't make that mistake. So after those 3 days, the social worker comes in and says, okay, your parents are here to pick up your son. You know, you gotta say goodbye. And they give you a Polaroid picture of the picture they took of your child when he was born. And that's all you get to go back with.
I was not able to reconnect with my son once I was released. I have not seen my son since he was 2. I've not physically seen him since he was 2. I've seen pictures of him on Facebook. The status of my parental rights is that I have not had my parental rights taken from me, but my son is in the care of a guardian. Initially, when I was first incarcerated, my son became a foster child for a number of months until a friend of mine came from Oregon to get him. When she told me that she was going to keep him until he was 18, I hired an attorney and I went to court to get custody of him back. And I lost. I already had a son who was murdered in 2004, and I just couldn't take not having my son once I got out, as I was told by her. So I just had to go to the same place in my mind that I went while I was incarcerated, which is a place of numbness. It's a place of not thinking about him anymore because it hurt too much, and I just couldn't allow myself to go insane of the wanting of him. I didn't want to sign those papers that they brought to me in the jail. As a matter of fact, next to my signature, I put signing under duress, because they told me that it didn't matter whether I signed or not. They were still going to do what they were going to do. And I did want him cared for properly. So I shut down. I shut down then, and to a certain extent, I'm still shut down because I love my son.
I do see my oldest too, my 16-year-old Christophan and my 11-year-old Camara. I have not seen Damari in 6 years, and I have not seen Harmony in 4 years. Damari is in North Dakota with his dad's girlfriend, and Harmony was adopted out while I was incarcerated. So when I gave birth to Harmony, I was still addicted to crystal meth, and so she was taken from the hospital. I was going through the family reunification process. I was going to all of my visits. And when I went to jail the first time, when I got out, it was so hard to get in contact with the social worker. I couldn't get any phone calls back from the foster parents. And so I was not able to set up my visitations again. They never offered me a program. They never offered me housing. They just told me to make sure that I go and drug test. When I had found out she was adopted out, I had went to the courts and had tried to get some sort of answers. My public defender, told me that after 60 days, he was no longer my public defender. And I had asked, well, during those 60 days, you still were. So why didn't you contact me in the jail? And he had just said that, there wasn't much that he could do at that point. I had filed papers with the courts, and they told me because I didn't have any parental rights that I wasn't entitled to any of those documents. So even today, I'm still not able to get any of those minute orders. At that time, I thought that I had already lost her. I didn't know that I still had my parental rights. And so it just caused me to fall deeper into my addiction, and I ended up going back to jail. And during that time, she was adopted out.
I lost my children due to substance abuse. I remember the day I went to jail. I remember walking the streets with nowhere to go. And I had hit my rock bottom. And I knew it was going to be either jail or death. I wasn't offered any help. But to go to treatment, and not even a resource to what treatment to go to. I was so hurt about my children being taken away. I wasn't focused. And that's when I fell harder into my addiction. And I remember at night, I remember some days, I'd be laying down and I'd wake up crying because I just felt like I felt my baby in my heart. I knew he wasn't okay. And they had split my kids up. And they was going to adopt my children out. And I was afraid of that. So when I got out, I went to treatment. It actually took me 3 to 4 years to be ready. I had went to treatment, but I was just going because they wanted me to. I wasn't going because I was ready. And I remember I had them medically discharge me from treatment. So this last time around, 21 months ago, I had to do treatment. I had to do aftercare, and I had to find a safe haven for them to come to. I also had to do therapy. I had to do so many meetings a week in a month. So once I came to a new way of life, which was January 13th, 2020, that's when I was able to have overnight visits with my children.
My name is Talitha LeFlouria, and I am a historian and professor who writes and researches the history of Black women and mass incarceration in America. The story of mass incarceration for women begins in slavery. During the period of slavery, thousands of Black women, free and enslaved, were incarcerated in jails and prisons all over the United States, but primarily in the Southern United States. Hundreds of thousands of enslaved women and children, and also men, were trafficked through the domestic slave trade. And they were sold on auction blocks. And that was essentially, the beginning of what we understand as an epidemic of family separation. Laws known as Black codes were passed all over the Southern United States. And these laws gave white judges the power to take Black children away from their mothers and to sell them, to sell their labor to white families. And this system was referred to as the apprenticeship system. Its legacies live with us today through the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act. This act requires states to automatically file a petition to terminate parental rights after a child has been in foster care for 15 out of 22 months. This means that parents who are incarcerated for more than 15 months will have their parental rights taken away and their kids made eligible for adoption. This law places Black and brown parents at a severe disadvantage. Black women and women of color are more likely to get longer sentences and to not have sufficient funds for cash bail. But speaking of cash, there's actually a profit being made off of children who are basically sold through this act. States actually collect money, thousands of dollars, for every child that gets adopted out. So ASFA essentially generates income for states in the same way that slavery generated income for enslavers.
My name is Andrea Mazingo. I'm a Orrick Racial Justice Fellow, and for A New Way of Life, I'm a family reunification attorney. I am the beneficiary of a lifetime of white privilege, unfair white privilege, and it is important to me to put this privilege to good use. Family separation doesn't just happen at the border, and systemic racism isn't just perpetrated by police and prosecutors. Both happen routinely across the US by child welfare agencies. To put it bluntly, California is tearing Black and brown families apart. Most of our clients face extreme challenges once a dependency court proceeding is initiated, no matter the reason that the child was detained. They are forced to defend their fitness as parents for having criminal histories, for living in transitional housing, for using legal substances like marijuana, or even for being suspected of having basic mental health conditions like anxiety or depression. So the results of dependency court proceedings are skewed in favor of adoptive permanency planning. California's Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 300, which gives the dependency court its authority, is biased against parents due in part to the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act. Under the Adoption and Safe Families Act, if a child has been in foster care for 15 of the past 22 months, it is mandatory for a state to schedule a hearing to terminate the parent's rights in order to maintain eligibility for federal funding. In addition, the federal government pays bounties to states for every adoption that occurs, so long as there are more adoptions in any given year than the year prior. And in turn, states tend to use this federal funding to support functions that are further to adoptive permanency planning, which limits the quality and availability of family reunification services and the court-appointed legal defense for parents. Due to this federal law, California's Welfare and Institutions Code, it statutorily limits family reunification services to a period of 12 months, which in some circumstances can be extended to 18 months, but if a child is detained under the age of 3, it can actually be shortcut to 6 months. It is extremely difficult for a parent to demonstrate rehabilitation on this timeline, especially if they are incarcerated. This is vitally important work because the generational trauma that is caused by incarceration will perpetuate until these problems are solved. The Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act and California's Welfare and Institution Code need to be overhauled, and child welfare agencies across the U.S. need to be held accountable for their bias. A New Way of Life's family reunification legal program is undertaking these goals while also representing each of our individual clients in their respective court proceedings. And we get a new client almost every day.
Today, I am the founder and executive director of Turning Point, the sister alliance of the Safe House Network, supporting formerly incarcerated women through their transition back into society. And to me, being able to be in a position to help women, men re-enter and successfully reintegrate back into the community, it is heartwarming to me to be able to be a part of their journey. It feels good to be able to be in the community that I once was ravishing, to be able to be at a place now where I'm able to give back and have people who exited the program through the supportive services side to come back and say, I got my kids back. And to hear thank you. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have been able to get my kids back. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to receive housing. So that is a joy in itself.
My name is Antoinette Carter. I am an HR professional. My first recollection of my mother being incarcerated, I was 5 years old. I had to look at all of the factors that went into the road or the path that my mother took. I had to understand the outside factors. I had to understand the role that everyone in her path took for her to get to that place. You know, as a kid, you have, or as a child, you have these phases where you kind of think you know everything, and I don't think that you've experienced enough in life to really understand some of the things that your parents have gone through. And I think becoming an adult, experiencing more, helped me to understand some of the pitfalls, some of the traps that were laid for my mother, and some of the trap doors that she fell down in that process. And totally understanding that wasn't where she wanted to be, it just happened to be where she was. There's a difference.
I have renewed hope for the first time in a long time, because Susan Burton of A New Way of Life put me in connection with two attorneys, one by the name of Andy, who has been phenomenal in helping me to relocate my son. I actually talked to the guardian for the first time in many years, and I was able to get her to at least accept a friend request on Facebook so I could see pictures of him that are not at 2 years of age.
I'll never forget what kind of made me go back to church. Was I got a letter from my son Adrian, and I have that letter. And it said, Mom, I know where you're at. Dad told us, but it's okay. We're praying for you to get better and get out and do better. I felt like I still had a chance. It wasn't nothing negative that he was saying to me. It was positive, and it made me feel positive. And it kind of made me feel like, okay, you probably still got a chance to be that mom. You know, you didn't mess up that bad. I asked my daughter, who was living with my mom at the time, how she felt about moving with me, because she was 6 months when I gave her to my parents. And I showed her the apartment that they had for us, which was a 1-bedroom apartment. And I said, well, let's just start with you spending the night. And kind of went from there. And then she came, she lived with me. And then my son, Elijah, came and visited for Easter. And he said, Mom, I want to live with you. And it was just like, you know, and I told him, you call and ask your daddy and make sure it's okay. I didn't ever think that my oldest son would move home. And after 16 years, he came home. So it made me feel like I was doing something right.
So when I found Anthony on Facebook, after 14 years, seeing him for the first time was like the sun coming in after darkness, like just perpetual darkness. It was like the sun coming in because I could see him and that he's alive and that he made it and that he is alive, because for so long I didn't know if he was alive or dead.
Andy not only has helped with Harmony, but she has also helped file the papers so that I can get my 11-year-old back. So Kamira will now be coming to live with me full time, thanks to Andy filing those papers. And I just would like to tell them that I know I couldn't think of anyone else who would be better to walk alongside me and fight this battle than them two. The people that are, especially the social workers and anyone who's involved with separating children, that they really need to look at the damage that they're doing. Just because a person has messed up or made a mistake doesn't mean that they should have to suffer those consequences for the rest of their lives. People change. And I feel like if a person can prove, you know, not just anyone, but if a person can prove that they have changed and that they are doing everything that they can to be a better person, to be a better mother, to be a better father, that they should be given a second chance. Like, there's a saying that says America is the land of second chance, but I don't see it happening. They separate us and they take our children and they just like close the file and they never open it back up. And I think that that should change. This is happening nationwide. And so we really need to bring more awareness. I think oftentimes people don't really know what goes on. And so we really need to let these people see that it's not right for them to just take, you know, and separate families and just never even consider looking into the case again.
some people make mistakes. We all have made some type of mistake, but some people make mistakes that are far-reaching. And sometimes it takes support in order for that person to realize their mistakes and to change their mistakes into their message. And that's the message that I would like to get across to people.
If I had one thing to be able to tell my children, it would be that I love them and I made some bad decisions. And just because I made some bad decisions that took me away from them did not mean I did not love them. I was just on a path where I didn't know how to come back.
It took 4 years for me to get my other kids back. And it is possible. There is light at the end of that tunnel. There is purpose. There is reason. They do need you. So please do not give up. And there are resources in the community to help you. It took a village for me to get to where I am to have my children. I am that mother who got a second chance at being a mother, and me and my children are better for it.